What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Ross Simmonds of FoundationInc.co. And Ross, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, there was a really good one I did with Kevin Hurrigan of Spignatech. He's had an agency since 1995. Wow. And so we talked about the landscape of the internet, business, agency life back then, and kind of the ups and downs through the journey. So that was a really interesting one. Also, Todd Taskey was another good one. He helps pair agencies with private equity. He actually helps sell agencies. And so he has a Second Bite podcast, and he has agencies come on and talk about the sale of their business. But it's not like the traditional sale. It's, it's called Second Bite because they'll sell the private equity and the private equity sells again. So sometimes those companies are making more on the second bite than they do on the first. So it's just interesting to hear the agency space valuations and everything like that on that one. And you can check out more on inspiredinsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. We also call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background and make it look easy for the host and the company so they can develop amazing relationships and create great content. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about having a podcast, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com to learn more, or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce Ross Simmonds. He's the founder and CEO of the Foundation. Foundation is a global marketing agency that provides services to organizations all over the world. And it ranges from the fastest growing startups to global SaaS companies and brands. They've worked with companies from Unbounce to Canva and many more. Ross was actually named one of Atlantic Canada's top 50 CEOs and one of the top marketers by BuzzSumo and SEMrush. Ross is also a speaker, angel investor, and author of multiple books. Ross, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Excited to be here.
So just tell people a little bit more about Foundation and what you do.
Yeah, so Foundation is a content marketing firm that focuses on B2B SaaS. So we work with B2B SaaS companies on 4 key things. First is research. We help them understand their audience, and we do this by really diving deep into understanding their what we call a content portfolio. So we believe that you need to think about marketing the same way that you would think about investing. And every time that you create an asset, you're essentially making an investment. And we believe in creating high-value content that nurtures and builds relationships, as you talked about, with your ideal customer, whether it's a landing page, whether it's a blog post, whether it's an asset that's intent is to generate backlinks. We want to help our partners create and invest in content that drives results. Now, here's what's different about Foundation versus most companies. In content marketing, a lot of content companies will focus exclusively on creation. You sign up, they'll write blog posts, they'll write more blog posts, they'll write more blog posts, and they'll send you a report saying that they published these blog posts. What's different about us is we actually think that the work begins after we hit publish. So those blog posts now need to be distributed. And we run what we call distribution playbooks to make those stories spread, whether that's sharing that content on LinkedIn, whether it's sharing it through X, whether it's sharing it through niche communities or newsletters. We run distribution playbooks on the content that we create to really emphasize that idea that a lot of content marketing companies have forgotten about that second word in our industry, marketing. You have to market the content that we create. And then finally, after we have distributed it, we also come back to it and we optimize that content for conversion, for SEO, and all kinds of other purposes based off of the client. So long story, a little bit longer, we're full service, organic, publicly focused, like not publicly traded, but we're a private company, but we are publicly focused on that idea of creating content for blogs, for landing pages, etc., communities, all of that good stuff.
So, Ross, how'd you get into this?
Yeah, so I am a digital content geek. When I was in university, I ran a fantasy football blog, and that blog paid for my tuition. And when that blog was going up and to the right, I realized that this internet thing was going to last. So I went all in. I launched a little website called rosssimmons.com. I wrote an article called 5 Things That You Should Know About Targeting Generation Y, because back then Gen Y was still kind of young and hip and cool, and everybody wanted to target to them. And I started to get emails from brands all over the world while I was living in Nova Scotia, small place in my parents' basement, saying, Ross, can you fly down to Miami and speak with our C-suite on marketing to Gen Y? And I was like, whoa, this is wild. Like, this internet thing is going to last. So I doubled down. I started to continue to create more and more content. And then from there, the history kind of just wrote itself, where I went from writing a fantasy football blog, shifted it 100% into writing about marketing, and then took off, and I launched Foundation in 2014. And we've been helping B2B brands ever since.
Talk about niche for a second. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you could have gone you started it's very hard to start a successful like B2C type of brand, like a fantasy football blogger.
Yeah.
What made you decide to go into B2B, and what were some of maybe the evolution of the industries?
Yeah.
We're looking here at the website, you can see your industries that you serve. There's software companies, manufacturing, B2B, and I love this one, boring quote industries here.
Yeah.
What was the evolution of the niches?
Yeah. So in the early days, I loved B2C because of the scale, the amount of people that you can connect with, the stories, the big ads, etc. And I spent about 1.5 years working in a traditional agency running campaigns for some of the top CPG brands in the world. Through that experience, though, I really started to get uneasy and struggled with this fact that I could never see the ROI. I could never know whether or not I was actually resulting in people buying more chocolate bars or people going out and buying more soup. Like, I could never actually feel that. So I had one prospect, which was a SaaS company at the time, and we were working with them, and I was able to see that the blog posts that I was writing, the landing pages that I was creating, were actually translating into demos, and those demos actually led to actual revenue. And that's when I fell in love with B2B. I realized at that moment that I love how close to the actual consumer my content can be to move the needle. And that's when I fell in love with it. And at that point, it was a gradual shift. We started originally at more general B2B. And over time, the vast majority of our clients have become B2B SaaS in particular. And that has come from an evolution of us just being really, really good, I think, through the reps at working with these SaaS companies and collaborating with these SaaS companies and understanding the different levers that they need to pull to be able to unlock great results and great wins.
I want to hear about a client milestone for you. I mean, you've helped some tremendous companies. I mean, we're looking at the website here. If you're listening just the audio, there was a video piece to it, but WebEx, MailChimp, Canva, Unbounce. What was the first milestone client that you remember, and how you got in the door?
Yeah, great question. So Rockwell Automation is a publicly traded company. They're out of the US, and they've been around for decades. I forget exactly what their name, Milton Bradley, maybe. They were originally, but they are a massive company in the manufacturing space. They create widgets, lasers that go inside of roller coasters, things like that. And prior to them, all of our clients were relatively like startups, tech companies that were like Series A, Series B, but we hadn't worked with any publicly traded companies before. And I spoke at an event called MozCon. And at MozCon, I talked about the allocation of budget for organizations being focused around experimentation, as well as the things that are going to work. And I gave this presentation. I talked about how some of the top brands in the world use this allocation of their budget and how this gives you a competitive edge. And there were a few people in the audience that worked at Rockwell. And I was walking through the hallway, and they were like, hey, excuse me, we want to chat with you for a second. So I brought over for a second, and they wanted to chat about my talk. So we were just like chopping it up, having a conversation. We exchanged business cards. I go back home and I Google who's Rockwell Automation, what's this company? And I'm like, oh, they're publicly traded. This is cool. Let me see if I can nurture this relationship. So I sent them an email. Hey, it was so great to meet you too, blah, blah, blah. Hope you're all doing well. Fast forward about 2 weeks later, they wanted me to fly down into, I think it was Wisconsin or Milwaukee. A small place, but it was a beautiful.
I was just there. Yes.
Were you? Very cool.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
gorgeous spot.
Yeah.
The Cheesehead. So it's like, is it Wisconsin?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I am, you're good with much better than I am with Canadian geography to
fair.
US geography. So I wouldn't be.
I love it.
You got
I love it. So I go there, I do the talk, I'm in their offices, and then we just had a great relationship from then on, and continued to partner and collaborate and just expand within the organization. And at that moment, it helped me realize, oh, okay, we're offering something that's so valuable that this type of company would want it. Let's trickle this over into other industries, and we just continue to expand and grow from there.
Love it. Yeah. So really, I mean, as I mentioned in the intro too, your speaking has really helped, and being an expert, but like not just being an expert, but getting on the stage and sharing that, as well as authoring books, which we'll talk about too. I want to talk about what you do with Unbounce. And I want to mention too, people can check out, I did an episode actually with Rand Fishkin, who started Moz, and who now runs SparkToro.
Right.
And it's a crazy story. I don't know if you know it, Ross, of like when he got offered to sell and he didn't sell. So it's a very interesting, background on the story of that. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of Rand and SparkToro and the work that they do over there. Amanda over there as well. She kind of coined that concept of no-click content on the internet, which is that idea of just publishing pieces of content that are so good that people don't need to leave the platform to go there. We use SparkToro all the time, and we leverage it to find the best subreddits and communities and audiences and things like that. And it tailors well into the convo around Unbounce, because with that relationship, essentially, we looked at all of the blog content. We had a two-sided engagement where, one, we were creating pieces of content at scale, so creating tons and tons of blog posts. But we also had an engagement with them where we were distributing these blog posts, so writing threads, sharing them on LinkedIn, et cetera, spreading them into the places where their ICP was spending time. And the pieces that went through our distribution engine, where we actually ensured that they were being amplified and promoted, et cetera, had 10x more page views than the pieces that did not. And that type of success we've now kind of built into, and this was early on, probably 5 years ago now, where we ran this experiment. And that's become a playbook that we run with our clients time and time again, where not only are we going to run your full content engine and write a bunch of great, valuable blog content, we're also going to write the LinkedIn updates. We're going to create a carousel. We're going to create the thread on X. We're going to help you understand how to distribute this through subreddits. All of those things we apply to the blog content that we create. And it just drives ridiculous returns out of these investments that our clients make into blog posts. And to the point around SparkToro, one more time, using a tool like that, what you're able to do is see exactly what subreddits, as an example, your community is spending time in. So if you see that your community is spending time subscribed to a certain subreddit, you now want to take that blog post that you wrote and you want to share it with that community. Those are the things that you want to do to ensure that if you create something valuable, you can distribute it and get the most out of it.
Ross, can you talk about vanity metrics for a second? Because, and I'm wondering if you're having this conversation with these companies and they're trying to measure, and if you could tell me if they're asking, hey, how many views, how many clicks, and you may be coaching them more on, if we get into this subreddit and you get 5 versus like getting a post that gets 2,000. So talk about your thoughts on vanity metrics and the conversations you have to have with these brands sometimes.
Yeah. So we always talk about revenue pipeline and the importance of actually influencing those with your content marketing efforts. But we recognize that not all assets, aka pieces of content, are created equally. So if we are developing a piece of content that has the intent of driving conversion, revenue, sales, pipeline, then those are certain types of pieces of content. For example, a blog post that talks about the top 10 solutions that are all within your vertical and within your space that have you at the top, that is a highly valuable piece to rank for in Google. And we should track whether or not that moves the needle for revenue, because you are trying to go after a high commercial intent query. But if we're creating a piece of content that is the state of your industry, we don't necessarily think in our minds that this piece is going to drive a ton of revenue, but we should be thinking this piece should generate enough backlinks. This piece should generate enough downloads and emails and buzz and maybe organic traffic that over time, this piece is going to show ROI through pipeline generation, through leads, through a touch point, things like that. So not every asset can be treated equally. I believe there's value in sharing a meme on social media, right? I would say with highly confidence, not a lot of memes drive sales, but those memes can drive a like, can drive a follow, a connection, a subscribe, which leads to down the road that transaction when they see that you just launched a new feature that is relevant to your product. So long story, a little bit longer. Yes, we have these conversations about vanity metrics all the time. But now more than ever, amidst a commoditization of software where almost anyone can put together a couple $1,000s and create an MVP for a product, a minimum viable product, it is so important for organizations to actually start thinking like we used to think about marketing, AKA brand. Brand is now more important than it ever was. Yes, it's super important to focus on conversions. It's super important to think about LTV and CAC and all of those things, demand gen, all of those things are super important. But brand makes all of those things easier today. So as much as it's vanity metrics, I think those vanity metrics are leading indicators to revenue down the road.
So what are some of the different purposes of content? You mentioned a few, which is there could be a content for high commercial intent. There could be content for getting backlinks because it's a more of a broad piece. Maybe it's a meme. What are the other purposes of content that you kind of walk your clients through?
Yeah, so there's a few different pieces. And if you go to foundationinc.co, right on our homepage, we have this idea of what we call a content portfolio. And a content portfolio is kind of like your stock portfolio or your investment portfolio. Every organization is going to invest differently. And the way that you invest is going to be different from me. The same way that a company who is investing in one that is in one space will invest differently from another. So for example, when we think of the content investment, there's things like social content. That is the stories that you tell on social media to engage and connect with your customers. We think about thought leadership content. This is content that is really important for early stage companies who want to accelerate their growth and stand out amongst the noise. There's also things like high growth SEO content. So what is high growth SEO content? It's content that is demonstrating that there is a rapid increase happening month over month in the amount of people going to Google, going to Bing, going to YouTube, looking for these keywords. So for example, if you rewind back, let's say 12 months ago, and you created a landing page on what is generative AI, that would have been considered a high growth topic because in the months to follow, it was going to skyrocket. The same can be said for some of the newer cryptocurrencies and things like that. Those are high growth opportunities. Are they risky to invest in? 100%. You don't know if it's going to go to the moon as it relates to that keyword, or if it's going to plummet and nobody's going to look for it again. We've all seen trends where something is hot today and then quiet tomorrow. That'd
be the growth SEO.
Yeah, that's the growth SEO idea. It's like go after those keywords that are on their way to take off. But there's also the flip side of that, where it's not about high growth. You're just trying to maintain. So the number of people who go to Google today and they type in what is a CRM is relatively flat. It's been relatively flat for years. This is what we call validated SEO. We know that every single month, a certain number of people are going to type that into Google, and we're just trying to compete against the others in the SERP. Now, the other type that is interesting is backlink content.
Let me just interrupt you for a quick second.
Yeah.
If someone, I love this, Ross.
Appreciate it.
If I want to point people to the video part too, because as Ross is talking, we are looking through this and I'm very conservative.
Right.
based on your model here. So
Yeah.
like you can click through and there's conservative growth and all the way to exponential growth. And so like it's interesting because you say validate. I'm like, yeah, give me the validated. I'm like, oh
Right.
wait, the exponential's
Right.
10% and the growth is 30%.
Yeah.
And this is obviously less conservative, more growth focused. I'm
Right.
like, no. And I'm like, okay, I'm number one. I'm like, give
Right.
me
Right.
50% validated. It's already
Yeah.
proven. So you
Yeah.
get some insight into your personality with this too.
100%.
So
And if you
anyways,
click on the question mark on there, it gives you a deeper breakdown
yeah.
of all of the
Okay.
different portfolios and how it
Yeah.
works. There's a conservative growth model, there's an exponential, moderate, balanced, etc. And one of the types is also backlink related. So if you want to rank in Google, then you care about how
Yeah.
many people are linking to you or how much press is linking to you, etc. And then the other piece of content that you can invest in that a lot of brands don't think about often is culture content. So if you're on a hiring spree, you probably want to create content that showcases your culture, showcases the way that you think, the way that your organization is run. Maybe you're creating pieces that talk about whether or not you're in office, hybrid, or remote.
Mm.
Maybe you talk about your perspective on async communication versus synchronous communication, vacation policies, whatever it might be. That's culture content. Or you celebrate your people. Did you just make an amazing hire? Create a piece of content about it, right? So that is the way that we think about content. We think about it like an investment, and we believe organizations should too.
This could be linked to like a personality test, like
I
based on
know.
which
I
one
think
you are.
I think I'm going to take you up on that and probably try to create one like that. I
I'm
think
like, if you're a conservative, here's your
right, right, exactly. I think it's
because
I'm
for
going to
some
add that
reason
to the
I
roadmap.
gravitated towards that one, but
Right,
when you're talking,
right. I love it. I think I'm going to take this as a takeaway that we should create a bit of a quiz on our site to do that, and I'll flip you a line as soon as it's live.
nice. Um, so I know we also mentioned Canva too.
Yeah, yeah,
So talk about Canva and some of the things you did with them and some of the things they do from a content perspective, because they
yeah.
are actually help people create content, which is interesting.
Yeah, one of my favorite companies of all time. I think their team is amazing. Lots of brilliant minds over there. And we had the privilege of being able to work with them. We had the opportunity to do both the content creation and content distribution. And the whole team over there is just absolute brilliant minds. We wrote a piece probably 5 years ago now, but it's still one of our most highly trafficked pieces. And it breaks down how Canva was able to structure their site with brilliance and how they were able to acquire backlinks with brilliance. And from that, a lot of brands have been able to learn and see how they were able to grow. And it's through things like organic outreach, finding brands and businesses and media companies that have content about a certain topic, reaching out to them, sending them an email, and then going out and trying to get a link to your site. What they also understand that I think is something that should actually be studied in schools is the importance of search intent. So, in all of their content, it was structured with search intent at the forefront. And we shared this graphic in our piece that showed all of the different types of intent that a user can have. That piece has actually gone on to be like brought into textbooks in universities all throughout the US. I've gotten emails from professors who have used it as like material in their classrooms. But intent is a very underrated concept. And it's the reason why someone goes to search. So some people go to search and they're trying to figure out informational content. So informational content would be someone typing in, what is a good card building tool, or what is a CRM, or what are the best podcasts to listen to. When you go to Google and you type that in, your intent is to get information. But for some people, their intention is buy, like they're literally typing into Google, buy business cards, or they're typing in buy a CRM, or the best CRMs for me. Like you need to understand the intention behind why someone is doing things. And they understood that really well early on, and that helped them scale and grow their business. Long story again, a little bit longer. When I think about intent, I think so many people underestimate the value of understanding that concept, because the information that you get is oftentimes based off of the words that you put in to Google. And a customer who's typing in, let's say, best podcast software is very different than somebody who's typing in cheap podcast software. But oftentimes we think that they're the same person. So what you have to realize is those are two completely different people with two different motives. One person might have a budget of $50 million. That's the person going after best. While someone might have $50 of a budget. That's the person going after cheap. And if you don't understand those differences, you might create the exact same blog post and think that you can go after it. But you have to understand the search intent behind the people that you're trying to connect with. And they did this extremely well. They have multiple landing pages that go after things like informational intent, navigational intent, transactional intent, investigational intent. And by doing so, they were able to create what I would call an SEO moat. And an SEO moat is when you have built so much equity in Google and on your website that it is close to impossible for competitors to come in and take some of your market share within the SERP.
So this one we're looking at here, Ross,
Yeah.
this is a breakdown of that, the Canva backlink empire.
That's it.
And it talks about some of is this the piece of content here that
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can see here some of their different assets that they've created that kind of speak to certificate templates. So the only people who would go to Google and type in certificate templates are people looking for certificate templates, obviously. But they also recognize that there's another type of person, someone who might be looking to learn how to design a certificate. So that's a different type of query. So they created content that went after people who might be trying to design something versus create something, recognizing that those two words, while they are similar, are actually very different. And you have to align your content around that search query at large.
Mm. I'm wondering about, you mentioned, that top 10 post before.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be any top 10 post.
Yeah.
Are there any favorites? Like when you think of top 10 and I always think when I see a top 10, I'm like, are they displaying all of their competitors in the same post? I'm sure I don't know if you get pushback from clients on, I want to put a post where, yes, I'm at the top, but then I list all my competitors that people can search on. I don't know. What's your mentality around that? And maybe we pull up an example, one of your favorites, maybe that you helped create.
Yeah, this happens all the time. And I get it. I get why people are afraid of it. But if you go to Google right now and you just type in top content marketing agencies, there's going to be a ton of content marketing agencies that wrote this blog post, and they have a bunch of landing pages where they're talking about their competitors. Now, you might think, why would they do that? They're going to give away their competitors' names and they're going to do this is not a good idea. But they always put themselves as number one. So by putting themselves as number one, they are owning the SERP for that query. So when you do that, you increase your likelihood of being able to drive traffic to yourself. Now, here's a little hack that a lot of brands have started to do, and I think Zapier does this really well. They talk about competitors who are non-competitors. So oftentimes, a SaaS company will talk about, ClickUp does this extremely well also. A company will talk about their top 3 project management software solutions. And the number 2 isn't actually their direct competitor, it's Google Sheets. And they'll say Google Sheets because they know that, yes, Google Sheets is able to be used, but you're not looking for Google Sheets when you're looking for the best software to do project management. Oh, what's number 3? Excel. Oh, okay. So now you have Excel listed as the third ones. So again, it's very difficult for you to say you're going to use this tool instead of Excel. So as you look at this SERP, and I'm going to talk through kind of my thinking.
I put in top CRMs for SaaS here, and there's a bunch of sponsored ones here, but Smith.ai is one that
ranking
comes.
number 1, right? And ClickUp, like I mentioned, is number 2, right? Yeah. So ClickUp is
we love ClickUp, yeah.
And you can see that they included themselves number 1, which is brilliant, right? They included themselves as the number 1 SaaS CRM, and for all intents and purposes, it's usually that would be a Salesforce, that would be a HubSpot, those would be proper pure play. Then they have Zendesk Sell. SendSL would never show up in like a common typical dialogue around SaaS CRM, but they're now showing up as number 2. So they're moving through Pipedrive, then they get to Salesforce. They never mention HubSpot, which is very surprising to me. So they removed arguably one of their top competitors from this SERP. Now,
and these are maybe more enterprise too,
more
like
enterprise.
Oracle. So maybe a lot of people looking for ClickUp aren't as enterprise, possibly. I don't know.
Right, 100%. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Now, with the rise of things like ChatGPT, everyone is thinking, oh, okay, but nobody goes to Google anymore. SEO is like ruining it. If you opened up ChatGPT and you asked it, hey, can you do some research for me and find the top CRMs for SaaS? It's probably going to find this article or the other one that was ranking number 1, and it's going to interpret those as being the best CRMs for SaaS, and it's going to give you that answer. So a lot of people are screaming at the top of their lungs that SaaS is that SEO is dead. SEO is dead. Everybody's going to generative AI to get the answers to their questions. But in reality, these AIs are using SEO optimized content to influence the answers that they give you. So by ensuring that the content that you create is optimized for search, you're doing a double whammy where you're supporting your optimization for generative AI just the same.
Yeah, no, I love that. And here's, like you were saying, actually, Ross, is the Smith AI does have HubSpot listed on here in Salesforce and Close.
Yeah.
You know, and they're actually, it's funny thing is, ClickUp is not listed on this one. But,
right. It's fascinating. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you use ClickUp for anything, but I view it as more of a project management tool, but people do use it as CRM, I guess.
Definitely.
This is super interesting. The other thing, Ross, I had a question about is, you know, your team and building a team and culture, because you've been doing this for a long time. Talk about the evolution of the positions you had to hire for.
Yeah.
From the beginning, because you in college, were doing a fantasy football blog to now.
Right. Yeah. When I first got started, it was just myself for many years. And it was, all invoices came from rosssimmons.com. It was branded as rosssimmons.com. And then eventually we started to kind of grow up and we made Foundation the name of the company. And when I say we, I mean me. But I eventually got to a point where I needed to bring in some help and some support because the late nights were just like killing me. So I put up a job posting. I hired a intern, fresh out of school, brought them in, and seen very quickly the impact that had on my quality of life. And I was like, okay, I need to bring on another person. So I hired again. And at this point, I focused exclusively on being remote from the beginning. So even though they were in Halifax, we were all fully remote. And then over time, I continued to bring on more and more people. In my traditional agency world, I worked with someone named Melissa Hughes, who's now our COO. And I remember going out for coffee with her and pitching, hey, Mel, I'm working with these brands. I'm doing all of this stuff. Would you be interested in joining my team? And she was at first like not really sold on it, but we talked through. She started to see like the clients that we were working with, the opportunity in front of us, and she joined the team. And that was a big trajectory changer for Foundation because it gave us the ability to really kind of grow up that extra level to be a professional company. You fast forward. Now we have Foundationites all over the world. Foundationites who have contributed greatly to the culture, both past and present. And our team today is just one that I'm extremely proud of, extremely excited about. And it's very cool to know that our team is spread all over. We have folks that are in Ontario. We have folks that are in the UK. We brought in James Sheriff, who is a brilliant mind in content production and developing content strategies that are rooted in SEO at high volume. And James has been amazing. Jessica Everett, who is a Nova Scotian. I didn't know that she was Nova Scotian at first and then realized that she was, but she has an amazing career where she's helped brands like Monday.com scale their content production company up and to the right. And then beyond that, we've got so many bright minds from top to bottom within Foundation, creating amazing distribution playbooks, geeking out about AI. We've got writers like Ethan Crump, who produces some of the best breakdowns, I believe, on the internet around SaaS and companies like that. It's just it's a great team, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
One of the questions, and you kind of hit on it with AI and Spark Toro, is I'm curious your favorite tech tools,
Yeah.
your favorite software.
Yeah, I'm going to geek out on you for a bit. So I'm a big fan. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole where a lot of people might not be today. But I'm going to talk about AI tools that I love. So the first one is 11 Labs. 11 Labs is a audio AI tool that if you have a podcast like me, I have a podcast called Create Like the Greats where I talk about business and things like that. Check it out. You can download all of your episodes and upload your voice to this AI, and it will listen to you and it will try to create a synthetic version of your voice. I've done this, and it's very difficult for people to be able to pick up the fact that that's not actually me. It doesn't get the abouts right, but outside of that, it's like very
Well, I
close.
don't have that problem.
Yeah, exactly. You won't have that problem. But outside of that, it's really, really good. And when I think of this technology, what I think of is the future of podcasting and how people will be able to use AI tools to create a lot of their podcast content, and how audiobooks will no longer
That's
be
exactly what I was thinking
this
about.
ridiculous labor of love where you have to
Yeah.
spend hundreds of hours recording. You can just upload your audio voice and it will take care of it for you.
So for your books, and I'd love for you to just talk the
Yeah.
titles. I want to go down the tech, but
For sure.
you mentioned, because that's immediately the use case I thought
Yeah.
of is like, oh my God, I have to spend like 10 hours
Right.
reading my book and make
Yeah.
it audio, and you're like, upload it.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know the quality now, but
Right.
if it saves me like 30 hours of prepping and re-recording,
Yeah.
what are some of the names of your books so people can check them out?
Yeah. So my first book ever was written way back in the day called Hustle Manifesto, where I talk about how to escape the 9 to 5 to create your own business. Since then, though, my most recent book, which I'm really excited about, is Create Once, Distribute Forever. So this will be my first book that's fully available on Amazon, etc., all that good stuff, publishers, all of that good deal. And it's going to help brands, businesses, and creators understand the importance of distributing the things that they invest in. And what I'm talking about there is every single day, brands are investing in creating content, creating a podcast, creating an ebook, creating a white paper, creating a blog post. And over years, over time, we've gotten into this habit of just creating, and not pausing and then spreading those stories. And I believe truly that some of the best content, some of the best ideas, probably even some of the best journals that would have impacted culture and history, and probably even like just good old fashioned articles and podcasts will never get the amount of reach that they deserve because the person who created it didn't know how to promote that idea. And my goal with this book is to get this in front of all of the people who have imposter syndrome around, oh, I can't share this, I don't want to be that guy on social, to realize, yes, you should share it. If you invest 20 hours to create something, you are doing a disservice to yourself to only spend 20 seconds promoting it. You need to share your content. You need to promote your content. And this doesn't just apply to marketing. This is internal. If you are doing a great job, distribute that amongst your team so they know how good you are doing. We are so quiet about the work that we invest in creating, and we need to shift it on its head and stop spending 80% of our time creating and 20% distributing. We need to flip those and have 20% creating and 80% promoting it.
So thanks for sharing that, Ross. So let's go back because I don't interrupt. I love the flow.
Okay.
Tools. So
Yes.
You were talking about 11 Labs. What else do you like?
Midjourney is another tool that I've been geeking out with quite a bit. So Midjourney is an AI tool that allows you to imagine practically any visual that you can think of. So you go into Midjourney and you get to use, it's all run through Discord, which I think is the one thing that is holding it back from ridiculous scale and growth. But it's in Discord and you have to type in /imagine. And then you describe a scene, a picture, a visual, kind of like Dolly, DALL-E, which is owned by ChatGPT, if you're not familiar with it. But you can just allow it to create anything. If you wanted to create and design a new t-shirt, a new coffee mug, a new logo, a website, you can ask it to do these things, or even a photo and a picture of someone with a child, someone with a Chihuahua, someone with a Yorkie and a Chihuahua. Like, you can create anything. And that tool, in my opinion, is game changing for the creative scene. And I play with that a lot. And this last one that I'll share is a tool called HeyGen. So HeyGen. And what I love about HeyGen is that it is essentially a deepfake for professionals. So right now, you can go in and it has an integration with 11 Labs, but it also does video AI. So I can upload a video of myself talking into the camera, just like I'm doing right now. And within the matter of a few minutes, it will sync my lips to that 11 Labs video, and it will create a deep fake of me where I can upload text.
A deep fake.
I can upload the text and it will say anything that I want it to say. But here's where it gets very interesting. They have a labs section of their tool where it allows you to tinker with some new innovations that they have. And one of the features is called personalized AI. And with personalized AI, I'm able to record a video and I could say, hey, Jeremy, I hope you're doing well. And then I can go into the text and I can tell it that where it said Jeremy, I want it to change to Jack. I want it to change to Alice. I want it to change to James, to Frank, to Ricky, to all of these different names that are in my CRM, and then send a automated video to all of these people with fake personalization. We live in the future. Like, it's wild out here.
I think you should have your next book should be Deep Fake.
I
don't know if someone has that title.
True, that would be a good one.
Deep Fake and then some subtitle. And it's like, I don't know. You know, the tough part about those is like tools change and their software changes. But I like that. You got me. I'll buy it. When you come out with Deep Fake.
Sounds good.
What about, and we mentioned a couple others, like there's Canva, there's Unbounce. What other tools do you do as a company? I don't know if there's project management tools or CRMs. Like, what do you like?
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot of them. We're big fans of Canva. We're big fans of ClickUp. We've run a lot on Slack. We're fully remote, so we use that. We've been using Zoom and their AI functionality lately as well. And we think that that is a great technology that we've been leveraging and we get a lot of value out of. We've tried a lot of the different sales tools that plug into your Zoom calls, but we find that Zoom AI, since it's now integrated directly into the platform, is just great to use. And we get a lot of value out of that. There's a small tool that a lot of you probably view it as like a Redditor tool, but it's actually very valuable as well, which is called Giphy. So Giphy, Giphy, has a downloadable app that you can put onto your computer and you can like create GIFs on your computer, which is ridiculously valuable for developing SOPs, developing instruction manuals, and things like that. And then the last one that I'll mention is Loom. So I'm a huge fan of asynchronous communication, where I want to be able to send my team videos that they can watch at a time where it doesn't interrupt their flow. So if my team is out creating or building or launching or selling or on a call with a client, I don't want to disrupt them and say, get on a call, let's talk right away. I can send them a Loom, which is a pre-recorded video where I share my screen and they can watch it and consume that content at a time that is convenient for them. Before Foundation was even like started to hire, there was another tool called Soapbox. It's essentially Loom. And I recorded probably 20 hours of videos talking through my processes on how I do things. And now when Foundationites join, they have access to a set of library material where they can watch these videos to learn what the Foundation way looks like. So they're not stuck trying to figure it out. Oh, there's a video, I can watch this and it will talk me through how to deal with this situation, how to manage this, how to use this tool, all of those things.
I'm not going to share this episode, Ross, with my business partner, John Corcoran, because he'll spend the whole day on Giphy, what you just talked about.
I like it.
I have to tell him not to
get
sidetracked because he loves creating these. There was an email we'd send, when maybe the communication got broken, like maybe we dropped the ball and he sent like Chris something like a kangaroo, like dropping a big ball. Like,
oh, I love it.
He'll spend all day.
Well, I'm
on
gonna
those, but like
go,
from a follow-up perspective in emails, even.
That's awesome. Well, here's one more that I'll share with just for that. It's called GIF. So GIF. And what you're able to do with this one is any GIF that you can imagine, you can swap the face with your own face and send a GIF with yourself on it. And it's a great way to build company culture. It's a great way to get a response to from a client who hasn't responded in a while. I love that one as well.
Last question, Ross. First of all, thank you. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, your journey, your lessons. Everyone can check out foundationinc.co to learn more. Last question is why did you want to be a WWF wrestler when you grew up?
So me and my
dad, WWE.
Now WWE. Yeah, exactly. So me and my dad spent a ton of time watching wrestling from the time I was a kid. And I just always loved watching these wrestlers just like be bigger than life. They would come down, they'd stand in the ring, the crowd would go crazy, the crowd would go wild, and they just had all of this energy. And The Rock was one of my like favorite of all time. And I used to run around and tell people, do you smell what the Ross is cooking? And it was just like,
they're like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly.
If they haven't heard of The Rock, that's like a weird statement to say.
100%. So I was just a big wrestling geek as a kid, and me and my dad loved it. And I wanted to be a wrestler because of it.
Who were your other favorites?
1, 2, 3 Kid was a bit then he became X-Pac and Six and a bunch of those guys. Ahmed Johnson, which is a old throwback, but I loved watching him. And then the usuals, Bret Hart as a Canadian. Every Canadian loved Bret Hart and the whole Hart family. And then Bob Backlund. I'm getting really niche and geeky. So I don't know if anybody's going to know who that is, but he was hilarious and a great wrestler as well.
I had on the podcast Colt Cabana, who had, I don't know if the longest standing wrestler podcast. It's morphed into a couple of versions, but it was called The Art of Wrestling. And he had all the greats on and all the, like you said, the niche people as well. So people can check that out. And we talked some wrestling on that.
I'll be checking that episode.
Yeah, Colt Cabana. Yeah, he's got various content out there so people can check it out. But Ross, thank you so much. Everyone check out foundationinc.co, more episodes of the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time. Ross, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.